Yeah, that was a decent direct, there's no two ways about it, so much so that we might even do some kind of reaction video and chat through some of those releases, because there's quite a bit of history to talk about there, and it does not feel like an end-of-life Nintendo Direct, and I'm happy to say it because honestly things were looking quite quiet. So to be sat here about to do a performance review of one of my favourite games of all time, Perfect Dark, yes please, we can certainly get on board with that. I've also got a couple of tips in there about how to set this one up as good as it can be, and a little footage on the split screen multiplayer mode. Okay, Perfect Dark. Is it perfectly done? Or a dark day for the Switch? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, now let's find out. First of all, in classic Nintendo style, you can't just go to the Nintendo 64 online app, download the game and play it as you would with the others. If you go to the N64 app, you're going to find that there's absolutely nothing there. Instead, Nintendo in classic Nintendo style have released a brand new app, so you can go to the eShop, download the N64 mature app, and then you'll be in business. Glen lamented the fact that they didn't include Conker's Bad Fur Day, but we do have Perfect Dark and Turok. And I guess of course it goes without saying that you will need to have the Nintendo Online, including the add-on that gives you the N64 content. You won't need to buy anything else to get the mature stuff. So then we boot up Perfect Dark, nostalgia kicks in, and we are greeted with, well, classic Perfect Dark, and it needs a bit tweaking. Now if you're unfamiliar with the series, Perfect Dark's a science fiction video game series created by Rare, but it's actually owned by Xbox Game Studios. I guess it's one more signal that they're willing to put their titles on other platforms, and obviously we had GoldenEye come before it. This one though features the main character Joanna Dark, and for many it was actually preferred over GoldenEye. Joanna's part of the Carrington Institute agency, and she's looking into a conspiracy about a rival corporation. From nefarious plots to extraterrestrial goings on, and it's up to you to find out what's happening. We do have the version of Perfect Dark that supports widescreen as well as HD resolution, and we'll go into exactly what that means. There is a little bit of setup when it comes to making the game control as well as it could. If you own an N64 controller, that's fantastic, you can use that and you're laughing, obviously the Nintendo Switch one or with the adapter, but for everyone else you're going to want to do these next steps, otherwise it just feels bad to play. Grab yourself a Pro controller or similar and head down to the settings option of your Nintendo Switch. We're going to set up a custom control config. Now if you set up the one from GoldenEye, then you can just use that, it will save you a lot of steps. But otherwise you're going to set up a new profile, you're going to swap ZL for ZR and vice versa, and then you're going to go into the stick menus and swap the left stick for the right stick. From there save it and go back into the game. Go into the options menu, into controls, and select 1.2 on the control set, and just below it there's an option called reverse pitch. That's just your y-axis. You want to click that so that up is up and down is down, unless you prefer it the old school way. That's it, you can go into game and it should feel much more modern in terms of those controls. So then the Switch version, well, as I say, this is an emulated release, but here's what we do have. In the visual options, you've got a high res mode, which slightly improves the in-game textures. The game by default will be set to 4:3 aspect ratio, but you can choose widescreen. You can also choose 16:9 to feel a modern TV. What you won't see are any improvements to things like text boxes. Lots of the UI runs at the old resolution, and as such, it looks not the best, shall we say. Now that really isn't a huge issue for me. The game itself seems to be emulated near native resolution, I'm not entirely sure, and in single player it targets 30 frames per second, but just like we saw with the GoldenEye release, it doesn't actually maintain that all of the time. Doesn't really matter honestly, but as always there will be a few people that feel a little disappointed that Nintendo haven't done anything, but these are just intended to be played almost as they were originally. Now when you split the screen, well, you can choose either horizontal or vertical, and the frame rate does come down quite a bit. around about 19 frames per second. Gameplay wise, Rare implemented many of the things they'd learned from making GoldenEye. You have individual missions that you can choose from. You've got the Carrington Academy, which is like a hub area that allows you to go training. And you've got a few different multiplayer modes. One of them's a traditional split screen where you're fighting against each other, but perhaps the most interesting sees one of you essentially agent smithing things up, spawning into the enemies, and trying to take you down. It was very fun, and it's still as fun as it was back then. Single player, well, you have 3 different difficulty modes, very familiar if you've played GoldenEye, and you'll have a set of different mission objectives to undertake. You can completely fail a mission if you accidentally put a bullet where you shouldn't, but these stages weren't as straightforward as the GoldenEye ones. There are times where you have to really look around to find where to go next, with hidden doorways and passages, and then you had the gadgets that were introduced. Ironically, she had much better gadgets than James Bond, one of them being a remote camera because some areas might be toxic. And then there are cool little touches like having to wait for this robot to move before you can get through the lasers. And just with its predecessor, there is a heavy emphasis on stealth. Here you can stand, crouch, or I believe go prone. Either that or she's really bending over very far. And when you're aiming down the sights, you can peek around the corner using the left stick. Headshots will be an instant kill, but most enemies will take a couple of shots to the body before you're greeted with those comical death animations, which I've got to say are still better than most first-person shooters. There are a variety of different weapons, from the standard silent pistol to automatic machine guns and assault rifles. They're much more futuristic than GoldenEye, and there is a good amount of auto-aim that you can switch off if you don't like it, but realistically with these controls I kind of needed it. Now the game is running, as I say, at 30 FPS, and in single player aiming's absolutely fine, although again 60 would have been preferable, but in multiplayer that drop is quite a stark reminder that this was an N64 title. Thankfully the co-op mode holds up quite well, and it's just as enjoyable as it was back then. And obviously you can use the Nintendo Online feature of being able to invite up to 4 friends, which you can then take into the game, so you can play multiplayer with people who aren't in the same room as you. That's very cool, and it's not actually something that I'd done before. It's nice to have it in there. Now in handheld, wow, it's playing Perfect Dark in handheld on a Nintendo Switch, isn't it? Just as I was with GoldenEye, it's such a nice way of playing. Of course you're going to want to tweak your controls to suit you, but still, just seeing it like this, everything looks nicer when it's squashed down to that screen, and just playing an absolute classic like this in handheld mode feels like a real win. It wasn't something I was expecting. When it comes to value, that's not something we can really cover in this review. It's either you own the Switch Online and the expansion pass, or you don't. Sadly, as with GoldenEye, you won't be able to purchase this separately, which is going to upset a few people. There are some games that I think Nintendo really should just put on the eShop and have it so that everyone can purchase them, and this is definitely one of them alongside GoldenEye. Man, imagine a physical double pack with those 2 in. Yes, please. But that's it. Let me know in the comments, are you going to be playing this one? I'm going to see if I can rustle up a few pals to play some of that counter-operative or whatever that mode was called. Man, good times, good times. What a cracking direct. We should have a roundup for you as well. So as always, just a big thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. Let us know down below. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!